Hi, Hamish Conway here, and welcome to TACOS Tuesday, the place for the best Amazon ads tactics and strategies. And this is episode 43. And with me today is Sebastian Hargraves. Welcome.
Thanks, Hamish. Good to be here.
Excellent. Well, we've had Victoria in your place for the last couple of weeks as we've been talking about the Cosmo algorithm and Rufus. So that's been, in terms of getting found on Amazon, that's been really important. And that was on the back of 2 weeks ago now. We had the Retail Fest in the Gold Coast, which is the number one e-commerce event in Australia. And that was a good time, wasn't it, Seb?
It was full on, but there was a lot of good connections made, and I think a lot of good takeaways from it.
100%. Obviously, AI was a hot topic at that event, and we also did a workshop at this event on the first day. And as part of that workshop, it was on advertising. And today we're going to share with you a really key component out of that presentation. Arguably the best part, where we're sharing the secret sauce in around setting objectives, because too many companies or too many brands, when it comes to advertising on Amazon, they don't actually really set objectives that are the right ones or meaningful, or they just start and see what happens. And that's a recipe for wasting a lot of ad spend and just missing out on the opportunity and, underspending or just spending in the wrong areas. So today we're going to get into some quite nitty-gritty specifics about this. There will be some slides that you can download as well to study more closely. But this is a unique way of thinking that if you've been advertising for a while and you're not working with us, then I'd be pretty sure guaranteeing that this is something you're not doing. But this can really change the game in how you can really scale your Amazon ads in the right way. So with that said, Seb, just while I begin the sharing process on here, if you're still just listening, that's okay. We're going to talk to all this here. But what else would you say when it comes to setting objectives? What do you see brands doing or not doing, as the case may be?
Yeah, I think the hardest part about advertising in general is the complexity of it. The complexity of it makes it really hard to know where you're going, what the right next move is. So this whole piece that we're about to do today is really about trying to get to a number. We want to get to a number that guides you on what your next steps should be with your advertising.
So when you say a number, what do you mean?
Well, we'll go into that in a minute on what the number should be. But what we're going to talk about in a minute is basically what number should that be, and getting to a number of clarity so that you can basically say, this is what my performance looks like. This is what it should look like based on what my objectives are. And so that's kind of what we're going to unpack a little bit more today. But the overall sentiment is like, let's get clear on what's the right way.
Okay. Yeah. It's really laying the foundations, right? Before you leave home, you just want to make sure you've got everything in play in the right way. So, all right. So setting objectives, step number one.
Yep.
What is that?
Step number one is contribution margin. Now, a lot of brands probably know this, but if you don't, this is the fundamental first step on understanding, what you can afford, when it makes sense. There's more layers to this, but really what this looks like is taking your average sales price, for those that are listening and can't see.
Is that a SKU level, going SKU by SKU?
Yep, you can do this at a SKU level or a parent level, both. It depends a little bit on your catalog, but yeah, you can do it at both. I like to do it at a parent level if you have a lot of, say, colors and or flavors. Otherwise, you can do it at a SKU level. Yeah. So you've got the average sales price minus your Amazon fees, minus your cost of goods, equals your contribution margin. So obviously, it goes without saying, the reason this is important is that this will help you. And so, this is your margin before advertising. So this is going to help you understand what you can afford to pay on advertising. And so it's going to inform the rest of your strategy.
Okay. And this is whether you're a vendor or a third-party seller, you've got a contribution margin there, and that's what it's a dollar amount here that we're going to land on. Okay. Is there anything else on that, or we'll move on?
So it might be, so the way you'd calculate this, so the Amazon fees is probably the only thing that changes here. If you're a vendor, you're probably going to include things like your AVS. If there's any other things that you're signed up to, you might want to include as part of this
Just your
equation.
rules in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The hardest part there is just working it out on a unit basis. That's one of the things we do for a lot of brands. So that would what I'd say on the vendor side. It's a little bit easier on the seller side because a lot of that is a bit more transparent.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So we understand the contribution margin, and that's a starting point. And then we move to step 2. And what is that?
So step 2 is to decide on what your overall objective is. So your business might be at a point where it needs to grow, or it might be in a position where margin is super important and margin hasn't been great in the past and you need to focus on margin. And so understanding whether you are in growth or you are prioritizing profit is going to be kind of the next thing that you want to define. And why that is because that will help you decide on steps that are further down the path here. But you want to know, like, overall business, what's the goal here? Now, obviously, in an ideal world, we do both. We grow and we profit. But whatever you're leaning more towards, for example, if you're leaning more towards growth or profit, that will mean that you will have maybe, like, if you're leaning more towards profit, you'll have lower profit targets, which will allow you to grow further. And then the inverse of that, if you're more focused on profit, you'll have higher profit goals, which will mean that your growth will be limited by your higher profit goals.
Yeah. And just to be clear here, so there's a few layers to this. You'd have the overall company account level, but then it might be different you could have multiple brands, and it might be some brands are more about profit, some could more be about growth, or even within a brand, you could have some products that are more about growth or more about profit. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep. Okay. All right. So we're actually just asking that question: are we looking to grow, and therefore we know that looks like we've got to invest, or are we more about profit and efficiency? So that's the second step. Then step 3 is set your advertising goal. So talk to me about that.
So at the highest level, your advertising goal is your target profit margin. So let's say you've got a contribution margin of 50%.
Contribution margin minus target profit equals target ACOS.
Yes. Contribution margin minus your target profit equals your target ACOS.
Yeah. So 50 minus 20 equals 30, which would be your target ACOS that you'd be prepared to spend to. Correct?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Those who don't know what ACOS is your advertising cost of sale. It's your ad spend divided by your ad sales.
To be clear, we are talking about sales that come from paid. Obviously, one of the benefits of doing paid advertising is you get more organic. But for the purpose of this exercise here, we're looking at paid ad sales.
Yep, that's right. Yep. Paid sales, and there's other factors here that would change what you want this to be that you need to consider. So if you're a product that's a repeat purchase type product, there's going to be, your targets are going to be very different versus a product that is a one-time purchase type product, because because of the repeat purchase nature of the product.
Mm-hmm. Okay, good. All right, so we've got established the target ACOS, and then we start to look at making the adjustments depending on what we're going after here, whether it's growth or whether it's profitability. So talk to me about that.
Yep. So now that you kind of understand what your contribution margin is by product or by parent, you've decided that you're in growth mode or you're in profit mode, you've set your objectives goals so you know what your target ACOS objective is, you can start to now adjust your advertising towards those goals. So, for example, in step 4, what we have is basically how to work out what your target bid should be. Because ultimately, it all boils down to the bid. The bid within advertising is really it's the piece that does most of the heavy lifting. If you get the bid right, that's going to be most of the work, right? Is understanding the right bid. So to work that out, what you do is basically take your target ACOS, times it by your average selling price or your ASP, and then times that by your current conversion rate. And that would be what equals your target bid amount.
Okay.
So in an example below, so in there I've kind of got an example. So let's say that your target ACOS is 30%. Let's say your average selling price is $25, and let's say your current conversion rate is 10%. That means your bid would need to be 75 cents.
to hit that,
to hit a target ACOS of 30%.
And so when right at the start you're going to get you to a specific number. The target bid is the specific number that we're talking about here, folks. Correct? So you'll be prepared to pay up to that 75 cents in order to hit your objective. You could pay less, but if you start paying more, then you're going to start kind of breaking your own rules, as it were. Like your profitability is going to drop, for example, if you started to pay $1 a bid in that situation.
Yeah, well, then you're moving outside of your target. Like, right, you spent all of this effort to work out what your objective was, and then you start moving out of there. The two main variables here are your price and the conversion rate piece.
Yeah.
Those things can change. So this is not a one and done by any account.
No.
This is a very, very dynamic kind of nature, which is why, it's why it gets complicated. So the idea of these steps is to try and remove some of that complication. And so if you follow these, you'd get to, this is what I should be paying based on what my objective is. Now, there's a whole bunch of other things you need to answer around this. If you went ahead and just did this and didn't factor in competition and stuff like that, you could kill your advertising completely too, because it might be that what profit margin you want to achieve and what the reality is are very, very different. And if you went and set your bids to what you want your profit margin to be, you might be no longer competitive, and you've removed yourself from the auction and basically removed all of your advertising and all of your traffic. So, there is a little bit of a piece here that you do need to be aware of, of that. And so you want to look at historically what you've done when you're doing this as well. It's not just blindly setting it, but you might be moving your profit goals so let's say that they're not where you want them to be. You may move them slowly to where they want them to be by changing what your profit, what your target.
Yeah. Okay. So this is really, it's dynamic. This is a starting point. And then there are a lot of those other factors to consider. Okay. So if we move on from here, and previously we've talked about having the right structure, and in the case of what we've been covering there, we're talking about individual SKU campaigns and then probably even campaign types. But there's this idea of giving every campaign a job. So do you want to talk to this here?
Yeah. So our campaigns, we think, fit into kind of three categories. I have them here on the screen. So we've got ranking, research, and profit. So the slide before, we built out, what our objective is, all of that sort of stuff. Now, with those objectives, we can start to give every campaign a job. Now, the target ACOS for each of these campaign types, so the one for ranking, the one for research, and the one for profit, will be different based on what our target profit is. So, for example, there'll be certain keywords that we know that are super important, that we know that we need to pay a premium to be a part of.
Right.
Those are our ranking campaigns.
Yes.
They're the ones that basically, like I just said in that previous one, where you don't want to lower your bid too low because you just remove yourself from the auction completely. Now, there won't be many of these. There'll probably be, if you look at your search term report within Amazon, there might be 2, 3, probably maximum 10 of these in your entire search term group. The next group will be your research campaigns. Now, this will depend on if you're in growth mode or if you're in profit mode. If you're in profit mode, you'll want to limit the amount of research you do because you're trying to maximize profit. And you'll do that by setting a target here in your research ones. And then the final one is your profit. Now, this one is simple. It's your target, right? The research and the ranking ones, those two will move around depending on what stage your business is in, and probably actually at a deeper level, depending on what stage each product group is in, right?
Yes.
But the profit one will stay fairly steady, assuming that your cost of goods and your Amazon fees and everything else stay steady. That one will stay very, very steady in regards to what you want to hit for your profit goals. The only thing that probably would change that is if you had a certain target and it ended up, again, like I said before, it ended up reducing your traffic too much. And so you had to revise your profit goals. And you might be like, well, instead of receiving a 20% profit margin, we're willing to receive a 15% because that's going to generate more revenue and, I'm going to make more profit in total dollars at the end of that. And that's where the constant tweaking part would come into it, is kind of, looking at those things.
And then, and also using the TACOS metric as well to see the overall impact on sales. Okay. Yep. So then, so the second part here. So what do we need to know about ranking campaigns and the job that they do?
Yep, so I
Going a
kind of
bit
touched
deeper.
on this
Yeah.
a little bit already, but ranking campaigns are, it's your most important campaigns. So the thing to note with these ones is generally you'll be in negative margin on these.
Okay.
So Hamish mentioned it before where he said, like, we're only measuring the advertising side. We know that there's an organic piece to this as well, which we're not factoring in. So really it just becomes about how much negative margin do I give away to get those organic ones. And there's no easy way to work this out. It really is just testing. So you might be like, I'm going to give away 10% of my margin to try and get ranking on this. Then you might move it to, I'm going to give away 20% of my margin to see if that improves things. And then you'd have to, basically do that test, see what feedback came back and decide, yep, that's working, or no, giving away 20% margin to rank doesn't work.
Yeah. Yeah. And look, and I was just thinking as you're talking there, like, for many people listening, you're in Australia and still in many categories, it's quite immature. So you can be doing ranking, but actually not being negative margin. It's often more in the USA where it's very mature and very competitive that you'll find this is where you might be ending up in a negative margin. All right. So then what do we need to know about research campaigns? Anything additional to add there?
Yeah, so research campaigns, these are really like I said, the ones to grow, that'll grow your overall count. Basically, the way we sum these up are these are ones that go find different new competitors that enter the industry and new search terms that might have not have been there. Like, people search for things in different ways over time. It does change the way they search. So research campaigns are really about trying to find new competitors and new search terms on Amazon that maybe you weren't targeting before that you can get sales from. And so really, the main thing here is just to understand what you need to set your target to. Now, the most you'd probably ever want to set to your research campaigns is your break-even ACOS, target ACOS.
Yeah.
That would just equal whatever your contribution margin is. So contribution margin and your target ACOS would just be the same number. So if you're at a 50% contribution margin, you would be at a 50% target ACOS for your research campaigns. That's probably as far as you'd want to go if you're trying. That's like max growth mode. Yeah. If you're not wanting to be in max growth mode, then you would ease back from that and be like, okay, like 45%, 40%, 30, 35, etc., and then scale it down based on on a whole bunch of things like seasonality. Everything else can come into that that equation as well.
That's right. Because when we talk about the Amazon ads audits and where there's wasted ad spend, often a lot of that wasted ad spend is coming from research campaigns. So it is about balancing the overall budget that you put into that, knowing that there is going to be some wastage, but at the same time you can uncover search terms or other products to target that can actually turn into gold mines. So that's why we want to be doing it. And then lastly here, what do we need to know about profit campaigns that we might not have already covered?
Yeah, I mean, profit campaigns, these ones, I think that probably the biggest thing to know here is that the research campaigns are designed to find search terms that then would get moved into profit campaigns. Yeah. So the thing to note here is that the profit campaigns should continue to get bigger and bigger. So every time you find a new search term where it's like, I've got a bunch of conversions on this, I convert super well, it's super profitable for me. You want to move that from your research campaigns into your profit campaigns. Now, you don't want to move every search term. Like, you don't want to do everything that gets an order, but that's called over harvesting, and that can cause problems as well. But moving search terms from your research campaigns into your profit campaigns that are the winners is a really good way to manage your advertising. And the reason for that is the profit campaigns will give you the precise bid because of the match type that we use with profit campaigns. They're a very
exact.
They're exact match campaign. So if I'm looking for running shoes, the ad will only serve on running shoes. It won't serve on red running shoes and blue running shoes. It's just going to serve on running shoes. So whereas the research ones are the research for a reason, they're much more liberal in the way that they're targeting. So if I ran an ad, for example, in the research campaigns on running shoes, it might show me for kids running shoes. And if I've got an adult running shoe, obviously I'm not going to convert super well on that. So the research ones do need always need to be looked at and cleaned up, but they will find more terms for you to move into those profit exact match campaigns.
Great. Excellent. And so with each of these campaigns, they've got their job. They're either ranking, research, or profit. And then within those campaigns, we've got what is our number in terms of the bid that we're prepared to pay. And that's where we're making adjustments. Like for if it's growth, we're kind of prepared to go potentially negative margin there to get that ranking and to make more sales. Or if it's profit, we're coming back from our contribution margin. So it's really making those adjustments to get to that target bid. All right. So Seb, I think that's really useful there as we talk about setting up your objectives in the right way, just knowing your contribution margin. And this is where, the way your campaign structure is so important, where you're not going to have high value products with low value products in the same campaign. That just makes all this maths go straight out the window. But This is when when you're getting really good at Amazon ads and you're driving this massive efficiency and performance in your ads. This is the sort of thing that you will be doing. You're clear on your contribution margin. You know what the objective is. Are you about growth? Are you about profit? You know what your target ACOS is, your contribution margin minus your target profit to equal your target ACOS. And then you've got your adjustments that you're making there depending on your selling price and conversion rate to then know what your target bid will be as a starting point, which is obviously dynamic. And the bid is obviously the 80-20 where you can really move the needle, but you've got to set it up right so you can make adjustments with the bid. So what else would you say there, Seb, in terms of as we wrap things up?
Yeah, I think if you can do this and get through this process, a lot of brands we work with, they're part of a big company. And a lot of the time it's really hard to communicate to upper management why this stuff is important or, communicate what we're trying to achieve. If you can do this part, you'll really be able to give confidence to put money into advertising. So the only one caveat I would say about everything we just talked about here is Hamish mentioned one of them, which was the average price point, but also making sure that you're removing your branded and your unbranded search terms. So that bid adjustment that you saw that we just did, only focus that on your unbranded side in general. Your branded side is a very different thing to do, but you definitely don't want to, and it won't work properly to do it on your branded side. So you really want to, this is really a focus for your unbranded, your category terms that you want to go after.
And what's important about that is that we're talking here about incremental sales, so a lot of brands, they're already getting the sales that they're getting, but we're about how you grow the overall sales. And that comes from targeting the category terms or other products. And that's where the growth is going to come from. And that's where the energy should go. Excellent. All right. Well, thank you, Seb. And if this has resonated with you and listening to this here and you're thinking it would be great to have a chance to speak with Sebastian, and whether it's just have a conversation about ads there or to have an Amazon ads spotlight audit where we can look at your current structure and start to direct you in the right direction with this sort of analysis, then you can go to gosellglobal.com and look at services and management for Amazon ads. And there you'll see a link there to book a call with Sebastian. So thank you very much for tuning in again, folks. We appreciate it, and do all those good things. Subscribe, like, and make any comments there. And thanks so much, Seb. Appreciate it again. And
thank you. Good to be back. I got replaced for a while.
I know, you're a bit concerned there, weren't you? Anyway, keep you on your toes. All right. Thanks very much, everyone. Appreciate it. All the best. Bye for now.